Welcome to Story Time. Tonight's story is inspired by The Man Who Planted Trees, a soothing tale of quiet persistence and the peace that comes with patience. Let this gentle story guide you into relaxation, helping you drift into a peaceful, deep sleep. Take a deep breath and let the calm of the story carry you away. In a quiet, forgotten valley nestled between distant mountains, there once lived a solitary man named Elzéar Bouffier. The valley was barren and dry, a place where nothing seemed to grow, and the few who lived there had long since given up on the land. They believed it was beyond saving, that its life had been drained by years of neglect and misuse. The wind blew dust through the empty fields, and the earth was cracked and tired, as if it had resigned itself to an eternal slumber. But Elzéar, a man of few words and steady hands, had not given up. He had lived in this valley for many years, quietly tending to his flock of sheep. He lived simply, in a small, stone house with a thatched roof. The house sat on the edge of the valley, near the base of a hill where the wind blew soft and steady. One day, many years ago, after his wife and son had passed away, Elzéar made a decision. He would dedicate his life to planting trees. He saw that the valley was dying, but he also believed it could be brought back to life. So, with quiet determination, he began his work. Each day, he would walk across the hills and valleys, a sack of acorns slung over his shoulder, planting them one by one in the dry, dusty earth. At first, no one noticed. The valley was vast, and Elzéar was just one man. But slowly, over time, the seeds he planted began to sprout. Tiny saplings pushed their way up through the soil, their delicate leaves reaching for the sky. The wind blew gently through their branches, as if encouraging them to grow, and the rains, though rare, were enough to give them life. Elzéar did not seek recognition or reward. He planted his trees in silence, alone with his thoughts and the steady rhythm of the earth beneath his feet. He knew that the trees would take time to grow, that he might not live to see them reach their full height, but that did not matter to him. It was the act of planting, the quiet hope of a better future, that kept him going. The seasons came and went, and still Elzéar continued his work. He planted in the spring and the autumn, when the earth was soft enough to accept the seeds. In the summer, he would water the young trees by hand, carrying buckets of water from a distant well. And in the winter, he would repair the stone walls around his house, keeping the cold winds at bay. As the years passed, the valley began to change. The once barren hills were now dotted with trees, their leaves casting cool, dappled shadows on the ground. The wind no longer carried the dry, choking dust, but instead whispered through the branches, carrying with it the scent of pine and oak. Birds returned to the valley, building their nests in the branches of the growing forest, and the air was filled with the sound of their songs. People in nearby villages began to take notice. They marveled at the transformation, at how the valley had come back to life. Some even came to visit, curious about the man who had brought the trees back. They would find Elzéar in the hills, his hands busy planting, his eyes focused on the task before him. He did not speak much, but when he did, his words were simple and full of quiet wisdom. Trees are life, he would say. They give us air to breathe, shelter from the sun, and homes for the birds. Without them, the world is a barren place. I plant trees because I want this valley to live again. And live again it did. As the trees grew taller, the land began to heal. The soil, once dry and cracked, became rich and fertile. Grasses and wildflowers bloomed in the meadows, their colors bright against the green of the trees. Streams that had long since dried up began to flow again, their clear waters winding through the valley like silver ribbons. The animals returned as well, deer, rabbits, foxes, drawn by the shade of the trees and the abundance of food. Elzéar's forest was now a place of peace and beauty, a sanctuary for all who entered it. The air was cool and fresh, and the sound of the wind in the trees was like a lullaby, soothing and calm. The valley had been reborn, not through great effort or grand gestures, but through the quiet, patient work of one man. Elzéar, now an old man, continued to plant trees, though his steps were slower, and his hands not as steady as they once were. he would walk through his forest, resting now and then on a fallen log or beneath the shade of a particularly large tree. The forest was his legacy, a testament to the power of patience and perseverance. One autumn evening, as the sun began to set and the sky was painted with hues of pink and gold, Elzéar sat beneath a tree, watching the light filter through the leaves. The air was warm and still, and the sound of the wind in the trees was soft and gentle, like a whisper from the earth itself. He closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of the forest, feeling the peace of the moment wash over him. As he sat there, he thought of all the years he had spent planting trees, of the many saplings that had grown into tall, strong oaks and pines. He thought of the valley, once barren and lifeless, now filled with the sound of birds and the rustle of leaves. And he thought of the future, of the people who would come to this valley long after he was gone, who would walk through the forest and find peace in its shade. Elzéar smiled to himself, a quiet satisfaction filling his heart. He had done what he had set out to do. The valley was alive again, and it would continue to thrive long after he was gone. He had planted more than trees, he had planted hope, peace, and life. As the twilight deepened, Elzéar stood up slowly, leaning on his walking stick. He took one last look at the valley, at the trees swaying gently in the evening breeze, and began his slow walk back to his house. The air was cool now, and the first stars were beginning to twinkle in the sky. When he reached his house, he sat down in his favorite chair by the window, watching as the moon rose above the hills, casting its silver light over the forest. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the peace of the night. Elzéar closed his eyes, the soft sounds of the forest lulling him into a deep, restful sleep. He dreamed of trees, of the quiet, steady work of planting, of the beauty that grew from patience and care. And in his dream, the valley was endless, stretching on forever, filled with the sound of the wind in the trees and the song of the birds. The man who planted trees had found his peace, and the valley, now alive and thriving, would carry his legacy for generations to come. Thank you for joining us for tonight's story time. This was The Man Who Planted Trees, a story of patience, hope, and the quiet power of perseverance. As you drift off to sleep, let the peacefulness of the story fill your dreams and carry you into a restful night. Good night, and sleep well.
Thanks for your time. Please subscribe. Don't forget to press the bell icon for more.